Hello. Hello, everybody. What's up, Avid? Thank you for coming in. I'm surprised I'm even able to go live right now. Got a bad storm just come through, and it seems like another one's getting ready to hit us. It's pouring rain, so I'm going to get my tail wet going back to the house. What's up, Wampus Cat? Mr. Avid and Wampus Cat's in tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about something me and Wampus Cat. There's Mr. Justin Fishing Fetish. What's going on, buddy? Jason Lamb. But we're going to talk a little bit about tonight. And I just happened to see on Facebook that it had done been talked about on another show with Caleb from Big Cat Fever. But I had planned on doing a little talking about it tonight. So we're going to keep right on keeping on. There's Lance McCougaid. There's Palmetto Cast, Rebel Duke Outdoors, LG Bass. What's going on, LG? Freddy's Outdoor. But let's start this off by saying, God bless you. God bless your families, and God bless America. And we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men were created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Guys and gals, go out and get you one of those. Go out and get you one. Read it, learn it. It's important, especially in today's way things are going. There's P&B Catfish, Paul Boyd. Who else we got coming in here? So I hope everybody's doing good. But what we want to talk about tonight, and I don't have a guest, guys, so if you want to jump in, I'll drop the link in the chat. So if you want to come in and talk about this subject, you're more than welcome to. There's the link again. Is shallow water catfishing. And when I talk about shallow water, I'm talking, 5 foot and under. But shallow water has to be relative to the waters that you fish. Catfish and crappie. What's up, Mark? Some people say that 10 foot of water is shallow to them. There's times, seasons, and places that you want to consider shallow water. Not all shallow water will hold catfish. Certain times of the year, what might hold it in the spring might not hold it in the summer. Same way with late winter. Me and Wampus Cats found out, and he's turned me on to it, that those bluebird days where it's cold outside, but the sun is really beating down on that water, shallow water can be your friend. Mark says 10 foot is a deep hole for you. Yeah, I know, Mark. Some of the waters that you fish, I see that the deep holes ain't but about 10, 12 foot deep, and that's pretty wild. In moonlight, there you go. The reason I say that, what's up, moonlight fishing? The reason I say that is that I, in all my years of fishing, would have never thought about on a February day, end of January, February, of fishing shallow water. I never would have in my wildest dreams. Even the days of bass fishing, we fish deep humps and stuff like that. Catfishing, wintertime, we always look for the deepest water to throw our baits into. And if you really get to thinking back about those days or nights, you might not have done too good in that deeper water. But 3 years ago, me and Wampus Cat went out. I jumped on his boat, and we went out and anchored up in 4 foot of water at the end of January. It was cold, probably 26, 28 degrees outside going down the water. We was bundled up, and you can see in the video I was still bundled up. And we anchored up in 4 foot of water and put baits in 2 and 3 foot of water and was catching 20, 30s, and I think 1 or 2 40s. Now, I would have never guessed that, guys. Now, some of y'all that's been fishing for probably Trophy Seekers Outdoor. When I say fishing longer, I'm talking about chasing trophy breeder catfish. Breeder size catfish. What's up, real gals? I'm gonna quit using the word trophy for after talking with Lyle and what he said that night. I agree. Breeders is a better word. What's up, Flatty Daddies? But truthfully, I think on those cold winter days when you got bluebird high pressure days, that those catfish move up shallow. And me and Justin sat and watched the water temp. That water temp didn't really climb that much. Just if you can ask Justin, I think it maybe climbed a degree before we left and went to other shallow water. Maybe a degree, but I think it's the UV rays that penetrate the water. What's up, Alan? That the catfish are coming up in there like an old turtle or snake that climbs up on a rock and letting that sun heat them up. Their back is darker than their bellies. What's up, Terry Lane? So they're using that water to heat up. And we had a blast. These fish was hitting hard, but there was some of them that was a light hit. Justin caught one. That bait had been out there for 2 hours. Nothing touched it. Picked it up to reel it, and there was a fish on it. So, I mean, yeah, I think that the bait fish eventually start making it back there in the shallow waters on those days when it's cold. But let's flip it over to summertime. Water's heating up. The water temperatures are getting higher and higher right now. I think they'll probably peak out around August, and then they'll start dropping as the sunlight starts getting shorter. The days start getting shorter. But Justin ran into something a couple years ago during the Jeff Manning's tournament. They was fishing shallow water. This water was bumping 100 degrees. It was 100, 98, 99. It was bumping right around 100-degree water, right at the mouth of an old hot hole. And was catching fish, actively catching fish. Just if you're still in there, how many fish? 99.2. How many fish y'all reckon y'all caught in that water during that time? And it was shallow water. See, to me, I would have never guessed that catfish would have been in that hotter water. I figured they would have been out in a deeper water, finding cooler water, but they was there. And I don't know if it was because of the wave action that was causing more oxygen in that water, because normally hot water don't hold oxygen too good. So I don't know. That's just a theory of mine. I would have never guessed it, just like I would have never guessed catching shallow water catfish in the wintertime. But we did. And proof is in the pudding. So if y'all several flatties between 30 and 40, there you go, guys. That's a fun night. What's up, Lyle, Panfish Nation? And Lyle talks about shallow water as 10 foot, maybe 15 foot. That's his shallow water, but mainly in rivers. So many different people use shallow water. A lot of people use shallow water, but there's a lot of people that will not take those chances. They don't trust that those big fish are up in there. Jeff Coat, I think it's his name, or Joe Jeffcoat, or somebody please remind me. I hadn't seen him on here in a while. He fishes down there at Santee, but he fishes up in the swampy areas. Yeah, Flatty Daddies, it's something that you have to build confidence in, and knowing that you're going to have to. John Jeffcoat, there you go. Thank you. But he fishes up in those shallow waters back here in the swamps. He actually pulls planter boards through some of those stump fields, and how he does that, I don't know. But he free lies the bait behind his planter boards. His baits are on the surface, splashing around, making a commotion. And he's caught some monster fish up in 2 foot of water in stump fields, pulling planter boards. And I'm sure he loses his share of them doing that. But guys, that would have to be so much fun. I mean, that would have to be so much fun. Those big fish blowing the water up, grabbing big baits off of the surface. So don't rule out shallow water fishing. Now, you're probably going to have to do your homework uh, to find places at the time that you're fishing. Um, they might be there, they might not. So that's something that you're going to have to. I didn't run to. Stick to deaths. One day they'll be in 1 foot, another day they'll be in 4. You're exactly right. So you got to do your homework, guys, when it comes to shallow water fishing. I mean, when you can start patterning those fish, paying attention to the weather, everybody says, well, these are high pressure days. It's hard for me to get those fish to bite. They go shallow. Less water pressure, less boat pressure, less fishing pressure. You might find those fish up shallow that will bite. Not saying that they will or they won't, but more times than not, I've caught fish in shallow water when I couldn't get them to bite in, say, 20 foot of water. Marked fish in those 20 foot of water, but couldn't get them to bite. My biggest flathead, which ain't huge, guys, it ain't but 37 pounds. Now, it looked like an 80 pounder because the head was that wide, but I threw my bait up on the bank and pulled it a foot off of the bank, and it probably dropped maybe a foot. And it was a big old, y'all know the heads I use, the big bass heads. And he took it like a blue would have. He slammed it up there in that shallow water. I heard him before I seen the rod bend. Don't be scared to go shallow for flatheads and blues, because during the wintertime, we didn't catch the flatheads. We caught the blues up there in that shallow water. You're right, Justin. In the summertime, the wind has a lot to do with it, he thinks. The wake and water moving oxygenates it. That's what he believes. I believe I have to agree with you on that, Justin. What's up, Squirrel? Because if that water's kind of stale and that hot, there's not a whole lot of oxygen there. Thank you, Buck. There's not a whole lot of oxygen if that water is not getting stirred up and it's hot. Water just can't hold much oxygen. Now, whether the catfish can deal with them low oxygen levels, I don't know. I wouldn't think so. I don't think too many fish can survive real low oxygen levels. Probably sunfish more than others, because sunfish, they like shallow water. They like hot water. Catching those bluegills on daggum days where sweat's pouring off of you, down your crack. It's so hot you can't stand it, and you catch them up there in 6 inches of water. So maybe they can stand it a little bit more than what other fish can. I just don't think those big blues and big flatheads, maybe they can. I don't know. The guys and gals, if anybody wants to jump in and talk a little bit about this shallow water fishing, feel free. I dropped the link in chat. I'll drop it again. I'm about to get caught up. Bathroom's done. About to get caught up, so we'll start bringing more guests into the show and having a little bit more content for y'all to. That's right, Justin. It was around that island. And there's a fair amount of boat traffic that evening. So, sometimes I guess boat traffic can be good by stirring that water up, keeping the oxygen level up. I know at that time there was a thermal line because we marked it. We was fishing, and me and Big Nasty fished a little bit deeper water and didn't do too good. Marked fish, which probably should have sat there a little bit longer, But we marked fish, but we didn't do too well. And Justin and them, and also Richard with Team Keeping It Real, was also catching fish and real hot water up shallow. So go figure, because he ain't really a shallow water fisherman. He's becoming one, but he just prefer to anchor in deeper areas with lots of structure, and that's his type of fishing. And there's nothing wrong with that. Boy, that was a loud crack of lightning. Did y'all hear that? It's a raining its tail off. I'm gonna get my butt wet. So hopefully the internet will stay up. We got lucky tonight. The internet stayed up, so I figured I'd come up here and try it. Make sure we had some kind of show tonight. But guys and gals in here in chat, please let me know what you consider in your neck of the woods shallow water. Whether it's a river, let me know if it's a river or a lake. That's right. He wasn't fishing too far from you, was he, Justin? That's what I'm saying, guys and gals. That hot of water, that's hotter than bath water. Well, probably about the same as bath water, but that's hot water. You don't want to swim in that water. Be like trying to swim in a freaking hot tub. You prefer the river. Yeah, and I mean, I know that with thermoclines, that drives the fish up. I've seen fish, marked fish, right above that thermocline. And I've seen fish nowhere near the thermocline to be suspended 2 foot under the surface. So this time of year was when I used to use just no weight, just free lining. What's up, Brian B? Fishing 3 or 4 foot is shallow where he fishes in a lake. Yeah, I mean, Moonlight, that to me, that's perfect water. But it's time of day, time of night fishing. Right now, as hot as it is, I wouldn't get on the lake till about 12 o'clock at night. I really wouldn't. That bite probably turns on around, you probably get a little bit of bite around 12 o'clock, but then your bite's probably going to really turn on around 3 up till about 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. 10 foot less for him. It's shallow. David Martin pulled plenty of fish out of front of the island and hot hole at night in August. Yeah, you're right, David. That water back there, I don't get it. Fish will be there. Fish will be in that hot water, and those fish will eat. I just, I don't know why. Go figure. And usually, oh, shoot. Oh, I mean, that's at 4 o'clock. Usually, I don't mark a whole lot of bait fish in that real hot of water. So, what are they back there for? What are they eating? What is moving water? That might be true, David. You know, I don't even remember. Justin, you remember if they was pulling water that night during Jeff's tournament? As hot as it was, they might have been pulling water. I can't remember. And I'm sure on rivers, that's a big difference, is the moving water. Yeah, you're right, Justin. As hot as it was, they was probably moving water. So I'm sure that helped a lot. But on times like that, guys, yeah, it was muddy. I remember now there was a mud line, especially back in the back of the South Fork coming out into the main river. Flathead Luke, 10 foot is deep for us year round. Luke, you're right. Wampus Cat and I and quite a few others, we choose that shallow water bite. Some days it's better than others. Some nights it's better than others. But it's figuring out why that is happening. Why do those fish run shallow? What's up, Creole? Why does those fish run shallow some days and not others, or some nights and not others? Because Justin will tell you, that day that we caught all those fish in the wintertime shallow, he went out a couple of days later, same conditions, and he fished a tournament with, golly. I can see his face. I can't think of his name. Glenn. And the fish was moved, had moved. Yep, that's right. You did catch it on the sandbar right out there right off the main lake. Yeah, Glenn. What's up, Fishing and Freedom? I just lost my train of thought. You guys are talking about that shallow water out there right off the main lake. Now, see, that's different from where they was at. To begin with, they was up in the back of a creek. Oh, he's talking about Glenn. They went out a couple of days later to fish that tournament, and the fish that we was catching were gone. They had done moved. They didn't come back up in them shallow waters till later in the day. They wasn't there first thing in the morning like me and Justin had found. So my question is try to get y'all to ask yourselves and try to figure out is why. Be like a little 3-year-old kid asking why? Why is the sky blue? Why is the ground brown? Why is grass green? What's up, the Morello family? If I can spit it out, is why? And when you can start answering some of those questions, it'll help you narrow down, all right, those fish was there 3 days ago, but they probably haven't moved far. So what do I need to do? I need to back out, scan some of the waters coming into there. There you go, David. Fish waters that has shallow water nearby, and you get a chance to fish both your deep and your shallow water. The time of year, Creole, the time of year the shallows are no go for our catfish unless it's in the middle of the day, unless they want to get bit in half. Why is that, Creole? Some of your bigger sharks down there eat them catfish up there in the shallow waters? I believe that's what it is. I believe Creole's catfish are scared of the sharks up there in shallow water. That'd be all right. I'd be chasing them sharks too. I think that'd be fun, especially in shallow water. But figuring out why. I mean, maybe they pulled off in a little bit deeper water off of humps, or maybe they moved to the other side. We was at the very back of a creek in the winter. What's up, Mike Irvin? I would have never guessed it. I would have never guessed that big catfish in 100-degree water. Just when you think you got to figure it out, they'll fool you. Just when you think you can go to that one spot and catch fish, they'll fool you. Yeah, commercial fishing are having fish bitten off their trout lines. Nothing but heads left. Ha, dog. Sound like y'all got a shark problem. It sounds like y'all got a lot more sharks moving in there than what just you caught. I'll be using steel leaders and live bait. I'll be trying to catch me some of them. Oh, here we go. There he is. What's up, Wampus?
What's up, man? Chilling
on. I was hoping you might jump in here when I started talking about shallow water. That's something you've always loved to do.
Yeah. Am I still on there?
Now, yeah, you still here. You kind of jerking around, but it'll be all right.
All right.
Now, one of your favorite lakes is Baden.
Yeah.
Now, do y'all fish real shallow up there also?
Well, you know, baiting, I fish the river section mainly that comes out of the dam, and the water's moving. So we fish a couple cuts up there where I can, like I saw somebody in chat earlier, where I can hit the channel or 4 foot of water. But mainly up there, there's a cut I fish, and I catch most of my fish out of 14 to 16 foot of water up there.
Okay.
Water. Now, later, like this time of year, if we fish, we go down to what I've told you about the golf course and stuff like that, and it's shallow down there.
Okay.
But Baden's sort of a weird lake. It's like Monticello kind of, you know, it's just different.
But now down there at the golf course, you talking about there's you showed me on the maps that there's channels and there's shallow, real shallow spots, but they got deep channels all around in that area.
Yeah, normally down there, you know, that's where we caught Gavin's PB. And down there, I'll anchor in that 25 to 30 foot channel, and I can hit those islands or the submerged islands in the back that are 3 or 4 foot back there. I just anchor where I can hit it all, really.
So I guess what we need to come out with that is that shallow water is relative to the lake or the waters that you fish.
Yeah, and I feel like I feel like they move shallow at night more, or like me and you, early in the morning when the sun comes up, you know. But in the middle of the day, I usually fish deeper. But at night, in the mornings, I try to fish shallow.
What actually in the past kind of convinced you to start going shallow? Because that's against the norm of what we always learned growing up.
Well, bass fishing, the brim, the crappie, everything going on the beds, the carp. I'm always one of these people. If something's bedding, I'm following it, whatever it is.
Right.
And I mean, you know, around here, brim and crappie, they bed in 2 foot of water, so that's where I fish.
There you go.
Match the hatch. What I do.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and that's what I've asked many of people because I think more in farm ponds. I've never found a real big bedding area in larger lakes. Of course, I've never really looked for them, but in farm ponds, it's pretty noticeable. But you can smell them when them brim are on the bed a lot. You can smell that water.
Right.
You know them catfish do.
Oh, yeah. And I told you that farm pond that we had in Kaiser when I was a kid that we messed up and brought the flathead in there. And after about a year, you could watch the first full moon in April when the brim would go on the bed and we would go up there and brim fish. You could watch the shadow behind the brim and watch him just suck them up like a vacuum. I mean, he just depleted our brim population.
So one flathead pretty much decimated that pond.
One flathead in about 3 years went from an 18-pound fish to a low 40s-pound fish in a farm pond. But our brim died. They were gone until we caught him out. I mean, he killed.
So that'll tell you something else too, people. I know you want to put a fish in a farm pond or whatever. Please, please, please. If you want to keep that farm pond a good, active pond, don't throw a flathead. Don't throw a big predator fish in there because you will decimate it.
Oh, and I was 17 years old, and we'd been at Santee and caught that flathead, and we had that farm pond. I begged Dad, please let me take him, please. And he was going, no, you don't need to do that. Well, I put him in a cooler and brought him back, and it just killed our pond.
Yeah.
We finally caught him out and ate him because, I mean, it was terrible.
Yeah. So, but you learned something from that, right? You learned that flathead was up there eating in the shallow waters.
Absolutely. He was hammering those brims.
So, are there anything that you can share that might help people that really don't fish the shallow waters to at least give it a try?
Yeah, I'll tell you another thing I've learned about fishing shallow, and this is me, but be quiet. I mean, people running and jumping on the boat, it don't work in shallow water. For me, it don't anyway.
Right. Yeah, I have to agree on that one. you know, what was that? Your daddy, he'd knocked you out if you took that light towards the water or anything like that with it.
Flip the light on the boat at night on my daddy's boat. We was fishing shallow. He'd whack you in the head, or if you was loud, or I mean, I fish for lights now, but he was just weird. He didn't want to fish on a full moon. He's old timey.
Yeah. But there's a lot to, especially in shallow water, because that water sound does travel, especially in that shallow water. It travels. I've heard so many people talking about with this new Garmin live scope or whatever. In the deeper water, the fish don't pay that boat a whole lot of attention as it's coming over. But 10 foot or less, they notice that as that boat's coming through, even with a trolling motor, those fish start moving away from the boat.
All right.
Now, they might come back, but that's just trolling motor noise and maybe your depth finder. Depth finders make noise, guys. Now, you cut your depth finder off in shallow water. Well, it ain't really doing no good anyway. But
when we anchor, I shut it down anyway.
Right.
But, I learned like bass fishing, you always fish the wind-blown bank. Wind blows the bank, makes wake. Little fish start eating plankton, big fish come in, and I guess that's where I started the catfish thing like that. It's
right.
Just water. I just always thought big fish follow little fish.
So, and I mean, that's true. You can put out a crappie light at night, and you'll start seeing the same thing. First thing you see is the plankton.
Mm-hmm.
Then you see the small bait fish and the small little tread fin shads and stuff. And then next thing you know, you start seeing stuff shooting through the light, grabbing those fish. And usually right outside that perimeter of that light, you'll see a shadow.
Yep. Striper or catfish always.
Or some big largemouth. I've seen some big old largemouth out there swimming around them too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I throwed big giant bass minnows, big shiners out there right outside that light and have them 5, 6, 7 pound largemouth grab them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Them fish will drift right with you in shallow water to get the shade. Huh. Never paid no attention to that, but yeah, it don't surprise me one bit. It's talking about fish will drift right along with you to get the shade of the boat.
Right.
But don't forget to fish docks either, guys.
Oh, no. Listen, Shane is the dock man. He's got them named. The flathead dock, the blue dock, the white dock, the copper top. I mean, he's a dock person. And he's got the same theory me and you do, because I'll always talk to him when he's going fishing. He said, I'm going to the flathead dock to see if he's at home, because he does it. I mean, he'll catch it. Every time he goes to the flathead dock, he'll say, I'm going to see if my 40's at home, and he'll catch him. So, but he believes like we do, they don't leave.
Right. All right. Let's go back to your bass days. How many catfish did you catch back in the day bass fishing with artificials?
A bunch, usually on spinner baits. That's what I always caught mine on.
I caught quite a few on pig and jigs. Most of mine come off those big 10-inch rubber worms, 10, 12-inch worms, Carolina rig behind like a 4-foot leader, where that's just, you get you a more natural presentation.
Yeah, I always caught baits in shallow waters where I caught mine.
And the ones that I caught on spinner baits or pigs and jigs, I was actually pitching docks.
Docks, yep.
And what is always something we all see around docks all the time, don't matter, year round, is brim. There's always bluegill or brim, sunfish, even bass around docks.
Yep, always.
And you not think those big flatheads, and I'm getting ready to dip into something me and you've talked about quite a bit, not on the show, is home territory.
Yeah.
I think that there's docks, maybe bridge pilings, other debris that are permanent debris, not moving debris like old bridge pilings they've rebuilt bridges or made new bridges coming across. I think that once a fish gets, 40, 50 pounds.
I think over 35, they don't leave. That's just my experience.
I think they move during the time of the spawn. The blues were moving, the blues move. And I think that's pretty relative to lake or river. You know, Lyle's got the study that where that one catfish moved about 1,200 miles or something downriver that they found him. And
Yeah, they're river migratory fish.
right. But you put them in a lake, I think they're getting fat and sassy, and finally said, nah, I got to find me a hole to lay in and just eat when they get around.
Yeah. Well, there was a study done on Santee in the early 2000s in the canal. I read it several years ago, but it was just the canal.
Right.
And they tracked flatheads in there. And I think on average during the day, their average movement was less than 15 yards from their nest.
Right.
And at night, the most any of them moved was 100 yards.
Right.
I think they find home and live there.
Right. And I mean, I think even the bigger blues, the older blues, and it might not be necessarily the weight of the blue. I think it has some to do with age. You know, we get older, we don't move like we did in younger days.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it works the same way in fish and other animals. We've seen that with deer. We've seen that with, you know, I raise turkeys and stuff. So we've seen it as they get older, they have a tendency to, their range narrows.
Yeah.
So I think they get smart. I think they pick places that they know that they can rest, but also get a meal pretty easy.
Right.
Barges beach against the banks are money. Plenty of shade. There you go, Creole. That's structure. I mean, that's just big structure. That could hold quite a few big fish under it. One of those big old barges. Now, I've never seen one personally. I've only seen it when I flew over to Mississippi. So I've never seen a barge up close. So I couldn't give you a yay or nay on that, but it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I'd like to do that, get a barge bite, but I've never seen any, you know, nowhere like that. One day, if I ever get the remodel done, I'll be able to go fish places.
Yeah. Now, you like fishing up there, was it baiting when the water is really rolling pretty good?
Yeah, that lakes, that river section from the trestle up is totally current driven. If they're not pulling water, you might sit there all night. You'll catch a good one, but you might not only might catch one or two. But if that water's rolling, you'll catch fish. But if it's not, I move down the lake.
I wonder why that is. I mean, the fish are still there, right?
Yeah, you can mark them. They just won't bite. I don't know. It's weird. That place is weird, that river section.
I had to fish a barge on my section with gravel from the quarry. Huh. They said he ain't allowed. He wished he was allowed to fish around the barges. But now, I wonder why. Man, I just lost train of thought again. I'm sorry, guys. I'm tired and I can't concentrate. What other waters do you fish super shallow? I know we do Wiley some. What are some of the other lakes that you prefer to fish shallow as to deep?
When we fished Hickory, I always go to Gunpowder Creek and fish it, and it's that whole cove, which is about, I don't know, a mile long. I don't know that there's 10 foot of water in the whole thing, and we usually fish in it. But it has the biggest majority of the population of gizzard shad are in that cove, in that lake. It's where everybody goes to catch baits, Gunpowder Creek. It has a low head dam and a waterfall, and it's really oxygenated. It's usually cooler than the rest of the lake in the summer, too.
I'm done. So, if the bait's there, good oxygenated water, a little bit cooler, they're going to be big fish in there.
Yeah. You know me, man. We fish together enough. I'm chasing the bait usually. I mean, I read that Chris Souders article, about find the bait years ago, and that's the way I fish. I try to find the bait.
Right. But there's times.
Yeah, there's times when much bait and they won't bite. I mean, it's a gamble.
And there's times, like that day we was in cold water catching those catfish. They wasn't hardly no bait back there, were they?
Oh, no. And the next day or the next weekend, or not the next day, but several days later, when me and Glenn went back to fish the tournament, the bait was there, but the fish weren't.
Right.
I think we caught a 30-something pound flathead and another big blue, but we caught them in 20 foot of water at the mouth of that creek. But they weren't in the back of it. Now, the word was, after talking to Jeff Manning, after lunch, when the sun come up and it warmed up, the fish moved back in the back of the creeks, but they weren't there when we were there.
Right. That's what I said. What I said earlier, I'd heard that they had moved back into the later of the day.
Yeah.
Into the back of those creeks.
Yeah, Jeff said after 12, around 2, when it got a little bit warmer, they moved back, but we could not find them. So we caught our fish that day on main lake humps and 30 foot of water.
Yeah, that's what I remember you telling me. So that's weird. The bait fish moved in, but the big fish moved out.
Yeah, it was weird. It was strange.
Now, was that a high pressure day too?
No, that
was overcast, wasn't it?
Overcast that morning. The day we went, it was high pressure bluebird skies.
Yeah.
So I think that day me and you went, we couldn't have did anything wrong. That was just our day because we went to the back of the Big Allison and caught them there too. It's just one of those days.
Yeah. It was that's fun, guys. If you ain't never caught fish up in 2 foot of water, there's Irvin. You gotta try it.
Yeah, they were busting the water before the rod. That's awesome.
Yeah, and now you're gonna have a couple every once in a while that's gonna run you around and around that cotton picking boat and just hang on and fight. That's all you can do.
Yeah, I remember Scott Cole, guy on Santee, him and Chris Newton, they told a story. They were fishing in a foot of water down there, and they had all fell asleep. And they woke up about 1 o'clock in the morning to clickers, and it was a huge flathead, like 58 pounds, had picked up the bait, swam 40 yards under the boat and 40 yards behind them. And they woke up to the clickers with the rod bending over under the boat. And he said, that fish was 18 inches below us, and us snoring and rolling around with that bait in its mouth and never dropped it. So
that's crazy.
Yeah.
But see, the only thing with us with them pontoons, that little old rib on the bottom of them pontoons, if he runs that line too hard, we just about got him gone.
Yeah, they were in Scott's big 32-foot tri-tune. I don't know how they got.
I hear you.
Yeah. So
how they got him in without that line getting all tore up, I don't have a clue.
I think it was Scott. Their PB on the boat at that time, it was like 58 or 60 pound flat. It was a giant.
That's crazy. Sound asleep.
Yeah, they were all asleep and woke up to the click because they turned the clicker on whenever they lost, like 3 in the morning or something.
Hey, and it's still storming down here, Justin.
Really?
Yeah, I'm gonna get my tail wet going home. I know that. Unless it slows down.
Yeah, but what you were talking about earlier in the heat of the summer, Chad and them went to Hickory the other night. I told you they left home at 7 o'clock, got on the lake at 8:30, and didn't get their first bite till 3 in the morning.
Yep.
And they caught 18 fish between 3 and 7, and I think 12 or 14 of them were flatheads. They had a good night, but he said it was a long. They got a bite.
Right. And it was somebody else that was telling me that their bite didn't start till about 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And they'd done fished all night and was falling asleep, and the rod started going off.
Yeah, that's what Chad said, because he had both his boys, 1 6 and 1 12, on the boat, and he said they were they were snoring when the rods went off. So.
Dam River guys said that for the last 3 weeks, they've been catching most of their fish in 2 to 3 foot from the surface in 12 foot of water on floats. Not just coincidence, but because they was also dragging lines.
Really?
There's a reason why people have put out jugs for many a year, and the deepest one you'll see is probably 4 foot deep.
That's we talked about that before. My dad, that was his thing, jugging, but none of the lines were ever over 24 inches long. And I guess that's why, well, a big reason I started fishing shallow for catfish, because we dug and we'd put out 70 or 80 jugs and have 50 fish. And we're over here. What always confused me is we're, 200 yards away from the jugs catfishing and 20 foot of water on the bottom and got 100 jugs out, and the deepest one's 2 foot. And I'm like, Daddy, what are we doing this for? It didn't make any sense to me, even as a kid.
I mean, if you think about it, Justin, with our boats, we're cruising, say we're at cruising speed enough to let our depth finders scan.
Right.
Say 2 foot under the water. Well, our transducer is 2 foot under the water.
Right. Yeah.
And it scans downward and out.
Right.
Those fish, we never see those fish.
No.
We never see those fish. So that's why I don't mind. Don't get me wrong, guys. There's a lot of type of fishing I don't agree with, because I think they're like when they go out grabbing those fish off the beds. I disagree with that. I don't like fish being drug off of the beds, but if it's legal, I can't say nothing about it. But with that being said, videos like that can be learned from.
Oh, absolutely.
Bow fishermen, I totally disagree with bow fishing unless you're feeding your family and you're eating everything you shoot.
Yeah.
With that being said, where are they fishing? They ain't shooting what? They ain't shooting fish 20 foot down.
No. You go to Mountain Island and I see exactly where they are. Everywhere I fish, they are. I mean, I have cussed them. Back in those duck ponds I fish in at night that are 1 or 2 foot, they just beat me to death back in there.
But they're there for a reason.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because the fish are there.
Yep.
Well, JR, be safe, man. I know you still out on the road. Be careful out there. So, guys, there's other videos out there that maybe not have nothing to do with you chasing catfish with rod and reels that will actually change your way of thinking and put you in a total different way of thinking about where I need to go chase a catfish. Them noodlers out there, they're dragging them out of the beds, but those beds are up in shallow water in the back of water. Knowing catfish don't move too far from bedding areas. The flatheads, well, you pull out of those areas, you need to start looking for structure.
Yeah.
That's where those fish are going to be moving out to.
Yep.
But I mean, Justin, I'm gonna ask you a question. I've seen the days where, let's say, down around Mills Creek, down there looking for perch and decided, heck, I'm going to start dragging baits in that area. That day, I think I caught 7, 8 flatheads and only 2 blues. And I was actually drifting with the wind. Had my baits out, the wind was blowing me back down the lake. And what I do is I'd troll up and then drift back down. And I was picking up those flatheads. Well, in that area, you've been after the mouth of Mills Creek. They are no structure. It's like those flatheads was out there moving. Now, don't get me wrong, there wasn't no monsters. I think the biggest one that day is 17, maybe 18 pounds. But I was having a blast. I was catching a bunch of a couple small blues, a couple of channels. But I caught more flatheads that day. No structure around. I was moving baits. Why do you think that is? Now, that water wall, what you figure right through there is 10, 12, 14 foot?
I have no idea. Well, on the backside of Mills Creek, over there on that point, is that old stump field over there.
Yep. So they might have been headed to there, transitioning from one spot to another. I mean, I can't remember what time of year it was. In fact, I was live. That was the day I was live and broke that rod.
Right.
When do I shallow water a foot or 2 deep? Do a lot of casting and sound rolling them in. Now, that's something. I watched one of those videos, Justin, of those guys over in England catching those whales catfish.
Mm-hmm.
They feed like a flathead.
Yeah,
they'll feed on birds and everything else that coming down to drink water or whatever. but they use a thing called a cupper, and they'll smack that water and pop that water, pow, pow, and those catfish come to that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that they think that something's feeding, or is something injured and in the water?
I don't know. It could be like the thumper, that we use when we catch. It sounds like a school of bait. That might be it. I would have never thought that thumper would work because I told you I was going out with those boys and they were running. And I said, my daddy'd kill all y'all for beating.
And y'all was catching striper, wasn't you?
Yeah. And it was, you could turn on that sonar and we're drifting, downlining and nothing. I mean, there was nothing on that thing. And they turned that thumper on and within 5 minutes they were showing up in the sonar. And all it was, the thumper was a window motor and a rubber mallet just hitting the bottom of the boat. Just consistent thump, 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 thump. That's all that thumper is.
And that deep sound, that thumping, has to travel a long way underwater.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you saw it when we were on my boat and beat the bottom of it with a bat, trying to getting perch to start up.
Well, that one day we marked perch, and the only time we could get them to start biting is when we was banging on it.
Yeah. So.
Real something to tell you. When the bite gets real slow, sometimes I take my oar, slap the water if you're not catching anything. I mean, that makes perfect sense. I mean, it really does, because like when those perch, you've heard them perch, you go out there early in the morning and those perch are busting shad on the surface, and then every once in a while you start hearing some bigger stuff feeding on them beside the birds. Them birds will feed on them too, but feeding fish and feeding frenzies got to attract fish. Oh, especially up in that shallower water, because that shallower water, that sound travels, and they're really making a commotion when they're pushing those shad up shallow.
Bear with me a second. I got to turn the light on. I'm outside.
Okay.
Kids are in the house being, so I got to sit on the porch.
They hear the fish hitting on the top water feeding, and they think that the splash of sound creates a feeding frenzy. Total truth. I believe that wholeheartedly, because I've seen and caught fish, bass fishing, when you see feeding fish and you've been working that area and not getting a bite here and there, and then all of a sudden that feeding frenzy starts up on the shad, you start catching fish. It's like they're coming to that noise.
Yeah, well, it's like birds diving. You see birds diving. You go to them. You can't tell me that there's something about that sound of those birds hitting the water that won't draw stripers or bigger fish in, or bass or whatever.
What's up, Danny Stone? Yeah, I mean, so that might be a tool for us to try. I mean, it'd be interesting to try, especially on those days when the bite is good.
Yeah.
When the bite is good, pull out something, try it. And if the fish leave, I mean, what are you out? A fish?
Yeah.
You ain't out a whole lot. So it's worth trying, I think. Because if the bite picks up and is already good, then you're doing something right. If the bite stops, then that don't work. But I don't know. I think that catfishing has not yet peaked. I think that there's some stuff out there. I think, and I might be wrong, but I think there's going to be a new person or somebody that says, we got to think outside the box. We got to take catfishing to the next level.
Be some young kid, bass fisherman. What it'll be.
Yeah.
Figure something out.
Yeah, because I mean, like you said, I've had catfish tear a spinnerbait all to pieces. It was useless anymore after he got a hold of it.
Yeah. Old willow blade.
Yeah. And a Colorado blade on a spinnerbait is a water thumper. You can feel it thumping that water.
Yeah.
And I've had largemouth just about jerk that out of my hand. They hit that thing so hard.
Yeah, about all the ones I've caught's been off willow blades. And the thing about that, you think about the way you fish a willow blade. I burn them. You didn't.
Oh yeah.
You don't slow roll a willow. You burn it.
Yeah, so you burn it.
that thing was moving when I was catching fish off of it. Or
Yeah,
catfish.
Yeah, and usually when they're doing it, you're just about seeing a ripple on the water. You're burning it so fast, and it's just right underneath the surface.
Yep.
So there again, guys, shallow water. But now we're saying shallow water. You might be in 20 foot of water. Shallow is relevant. It's I don't know. Back to the jugs, 2 foot of water.
Yeah. Yeah.
Danny Stone says he has an autographed fish clunker he got from Tim Scott at the Cat Con, but he's never used it. It's autographed by Tim Scott for Pete's sake. I mean, all you can do is try it, guys. What's it going to hurt?
Yeah.
You might figure out something that you might want to go start entering tournaments and winning tournaments. You never know.
Yeah. That's like the chicken thing. You know, that's I would have never thought you could catch fish off chicken. But, well, you know my secret to chicken. I'll do something different with chicken than anybody else does, and I've caught fish off of it. So,
yeah.
I cussed it, but it works.
Yeah. I mean, but you would you say that's your confident bait, though?
No, God, no. Shad, you know my number one's crappie in the spring, but after that, shad and then perch. But that chicken that night
saved the night, didn't it?
Yeah, hadn't caught anything on it, and we did the chicken in 15 minutes, had a 40 and several big fish in the boat. I don't know if it was the chicken or what I put in the chicken.
Right.
It wasn't no damn Jello. I promise you that.
But you know, I've tried chicken and I've caught, you know, a couple little dinks off of it, but it's not a confident bait for me. And I never really, about like Richard and bluegill, I never really give it a true try. Put it on the boat and use nothing but it. You know.
That night I had it as a backup bait, and it just happened to work, you know. So
I'm with JR. Chicken goes on the grill.
Yeah, me too, man. And that one of those nights where we were fishing a tournament, and I didn't have much bait, and I'd been watching a Dieter video, and I was like, "Hey, we'll just try it." And I like I said, Jimmy knows I put something else in it, and I think that had 90% to do with it.
I think so too.
Because they were feeding on mussels, and at that time of year, and we'd put on small bait. We caught a bunch of fish off of it that night. I will say that.
Oh, Chad said, you don't know how to cook. That's why you was using chicken for bait.
Yeah.
We're some country boys. We can cook.
Yeah, I had some of that government chicken on there.
It's mixed with government cheese.
Yeah.
But, you know, I've heard so many people talk about they used to catch them on channels on cheese bait.
Listen, brother, I'm telling you, I told you about my dad when we jugged.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can still get it, but it was called Zote soap out of Mexico. Yep. And it was soap made with animal fat. It was pink.
Yep.
And I've got a case of it in the building at my house. And that's what he'd put on those jugs. Now, you always caught channels on it.
Right. But you know, down around Dillon, South Carolina, down in that area, that's what they use.
Really?
Yes. Down around back in the swamps of Santee and stuff like that, them old man on their trout lines, that's what they used.
Yeah, well, that's what we used on them jugs, Zote soap. They always called it the Mexican soap. But it worked. I mean, you know, we never caught anything big on the jug, but we caught fish.
But there again, if you wanted to go out and get eater-sized fish, I don't see anything wrong with using stink bait. One of my favorite bait for channel casts was the old Catfish Charlie blood bait.
Yeah,
I've caught so many freaking. Now I've seen rods leave the boat with using that junk.
Yeah,
you know, I tell them boys don't stick it down between them seas. You're gonna lose it.
Yeah.
But tons of channels. And them yellow perch will eat the crap out of that stuff.
Yeah, I went out with that guy on Murray years ago on that channel cat where we caught those big channels, and that's all he used was stink bait and sponges. I don't want that stuff on my boat. I don't want it no thinking of stuff I've ever.
Yeah, you get that stuff in your carpet, you can't get it out.
Yeah, I mean, might as well use dog. You know what? Yes, me.
Well, see, with the Charlie, it was thick enough that we used little small trebles, and you can make a ball of it. Wire power rubber gloves, and you can make balls out of it, and it would cast good. You wouldn't fling it off. Now you couldn't make a big wad because it'd throw it off, but
right.
But yeah, Laura says you've been enjoying catching those channels. Hey, I love catching channels. We're gonna have to follow old Mr. David Martin. He's got a couple good channel holes up there on Lake Hickory and Road Hiss or something like that. We need to follow him up one day, Justin, because he knows where to get on some good channels.
I'd like to go catch something to eat myself.
Yeah, we need to get us a good mess of channels.
Or them little small.
Justin, I want to thank you for jumping on with us. Don't run off, but I want to thank you for jumping on with us. I appreciate it. And I hope y'all got some good information out of shallow water fishing. Don't forget to try it, whether you're throwing floats, free lining, or dragging baits. Try it. You might get your feelings hurt. You might get your lines broke. Those big fish do come up there and eat, especially during bad, especially when you got brim and you got. Now, that's what I want to ask you before we go. Brim bedding. I've heard that every month on a full moon, the brim during the summer goes on beds. Is that true?
In this farm pond, they do. They sure do down here. Now, the first
they spawn more than one time a year. What you're saying?
Yeah. The big ones and the first full moon in April here. But every full moon here, there'll be 3 or 4 you'll see out there on the bed in this farm pond. I don't know about big lakes, but
right.
Excuse me.
David is saying yes. He's learning a lot about the bluegill. That's what his thing is now, is chasing those big blue. And Justin, he's been catching some big hand-sized bluegills.
Really?
Big, pretty ones too. So, but with that being said, guys and gals, thank you for joining us tonight. We'll be back next Wednesday night. We do have a guest next Wednesday night, so we'll see y'all then. God bless you. God bless America. And we'll see y'all next Wednesday night.